Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics. In this episode, I'm going to talk about building a network and a community for yourself and for your family. What got me thinking about this subject and going down the path of making it important enough to put on this podcast is, first, I had a conversation that I've had with many families earlier this week about the family's identity, each person's identity and role, and the parent's frustration with the child struggling to have friends, the child struggling to feel accepted. As I was talking to them and peeling back some of the layers, we kind of uncovered that the parents themselves struggled for various reasons to have much of a social life. They didn't have much of a network and community. And then I've also been thinking about it because my daughter is quite young, and I have been very intentional about connecting her to the community that we live in, to the community of the school that we're a part of. And the reason I think it's so important is that I can remember growing up, I had various social problems. I was never the most popular person, but I had friends, and I went through seasons where I really struggled with friends. And actually, that's gone up and down as an adult. But I can remember growing up having modeled for me by my parents that they had a social life. They would have gatherings. They would have celebrations. They had an identity outside of just being a parent, being a wife and a husband. And until this day, some of the connections and some of the experiences I had as a young child have continued or parlayed into opportunities, into friendships, into important aspects of my life. And interestingly enough, I'm raising my daughter in the exact same community that I grew up in. And a lot has changed and some things haven't changed, but I have been very intentional about it. And as I treat families, I'm seeing that, especially these days, it's hard to build that network for some people. It does take work, and people are so busy. And I think that we're sensitive to, just human beings are really, take things personally, are pretty sensitive. And it can be hard to try to be a part of cliques that have formed and to reach out to people and have them not reach back, et cetera. And so there's a whole host of experiences, characteristics, personality issues, mental health issues, dynamics of things like work and the community that you might live in. There's a lot of things that get in the way, and I don't want to minimize any of that, but I do want to highlight that it is important as an adult, as a parent, especially parents of teens, to make an effort to be a part of a community or multiple communities, and to have that identity outside of your child. Again, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of reasons that some people struggle to make friends, or maybe had friends and then give up, or don't have time, whatever it might be. But I believe that one of the things that we need to model is making friends, building community, building a network. One of the pieces of the conversation that I have with a lot of individuals and families is that they will report, well, the people in my community or in my church or whatever it might be are cliquey, or they're judgmental. And I get that, but at the end of the day, how we handle and navigate those blocks, those issues, those obstacles is important in terms of teaching our children. And I think it's actually good to talk about these struggles with our children that we have, or the opportunities that we create. But as an individual, if you're somebody who's struggling to build that community, I'm going to ask you to write down some of the things that might be getting in the way. And some of them you may have control over, some of them you might not have control over. And as I've kind of said already, it might be that you work too much. It might be that you don't like anybody in your community. It might be that you feel judged. It might be a mental health issue that gets in the way. It might be a physical issue that gets in the way. It might just be that your personality is that you're shy and you don't like to reach out to people. And that's not an excuse, by the way. I hear a lot of people say that, well, they're not extroverted and therefore they can't make friends. And that's not really a thing. Plenty of people who are quote unquote introverted have a lot of friends. It's more an explanation of kind of how you relate and how you behave. It shouldn't become an excuse for not trying. And one thing, if you're on this journey, if you're like me and you decide to build a community around you, to be a part of a network, to make friends, to be social, sometimes you are going to have to suck up your pride. You are going to have to figure out that balance of how much do I try, right? You don't want to get creepy and weird, but you do have to extend yourself to make new friends. There's this interesting phenomenon when I'm talking to people in sessions, and that's a lot, if not most people feel like their efforts aren't reciprocated in an equal way. A part of building network, building community, and building friendships in your life is getting good at navigating how much you're willing to give, navigating what is the line where have I crossed into somebody's taking advantage of me or somebody is not respecting me or maybe somebody's trying to politely say, I don't want to be a part of your life. It's figuring out that line. And then we're just, hey, people might not be reciprocating, not because they don't care, not because they don't want to be a part of your life, but because they might have their own stuff going on or they might not be mindful of building new friendships. A lot of times you really got to put that ego aside and make a decision about how you're going to continually reach out. What line is too much? How are you going to protect your ego while putting yourself out there and feeling disappointment? Because the truth is 99.9 of us, when we try to build friendships, we experience that lack of reciprocation. And a lot of times, again, we don't know what's going on the other end. And it's probably not what we think. We take things personally. We feel like we're not included in things. We feel rejection. And so navigating, talking about, making those feelings, those experiences normal and not taboo is a great lesson for your kids. I was working with a teen not so long ago who had no close friends and really just kind of sort of had acquaintances. And this client, when they would think that they were starting to get close to somebody, they would always feel betrayed, that the person wouldn't reciprocate. They never could take the relationship from that acquaintance into actual friendship zone. And it was because they had taken things so personally. And in working with them over time and peeling back all the layers, what I realized was they felt like they were, for instance, inviting somebody somewhere and then getting left out. And they would take that really personally. And I can remember this one conversation where that had happened. And as I talked to them and kind of challenged them and reflected what they were saying back to them, they realized that their expectations for inclusion were unrealistic in terms of where that acquaintanceship or friendship was at. And they realized that they had this pattern of not just giving up, but holding a small resentment towards people because they felt so rejected and left out. But what they hadn't done is pushed past that point enough times in their life where something will stick. And that's the thing. This is going to sound really wild, but sometimes friendship's a numbers game. Sometimes it's a numbers game because you just got to keep trying with that person you think is a good fit and you want in your life. And sometimes it's a numbers game because, hey, over the course of your life, you're going to meet a lot of people and some are going to stick and some aren't going to stick and some you're going to click with during some seasons and some you're not going to click with during some seasons. And again, for the purposes of this podcast, I think that it's really important that parents not only demonstrate that those skills, or if they don't have those skills, building those skills. I think it's important that you talk about them and that you make the experiences something that's not taboo. make it something that the average person is experiencing. And I can remember saying to this particular client, it seems as though once you try a couple of times, you get so hurt and that it's an automatic rejection rather than seeing it as just kind of the patterns of life. And we went through some of these patterns with people, and it really helped this client to see their pattern of resentment building being quick, their pattern of expectations for other people. And look, friendships take time. And another thing I think that our children should experience is seeing that we as adults are open to new friendships, that we can recognize when maybe somebody is new to the community and would benefit from being included. I think that talking about that and letting them see us attempt to include people and to build relationships and to push through that feeling of it's not reciprocal, all of that stuff builds the character of the children. And even if they're already teens, in fact, some teens need that more than young children. But I think we should start young if we can, but it's never too late. I think that this challenge for a lot of parents is really uncomfortable. I use that term, comfortably miserable, a lot of times. And I talk to so many families, so many individuals. One of the things that I think everybody can agree with is loneliness and depression go hand in hand. And having community, having support system, if mental health goes awry, is a key factor in the resiliency or the ability to overcome that mental health issue. And you can't rely on friendships that you haven't made in the crisis of the mental health issue or life issue. As uncomfortable as it might be, and as comfortable as it might be just to stay stuck, keep to yourself and the one or two friends or people that you're willing to talk to, as many excuses as a lot of people can come up with to not build their network of friends, I think that when you put it in terms of opportunities for your family and children, when you look at it as an important factor in healing from emotional, relational, and mental health issues, when you look at it as being an important factor in something as dire as suicide, somebody who has experienced healthy community and support and has been taught to get outside of their comfort zone and pushed to talk to people and be a part of organizations that maybe they wouldn't be a part of normally, but they do it just to build that network. I think when you push children to do that and when you model that, what happens is the family as a whole becomes more resilient. And again, that lesson can't be done overnight once the crisis happens. It's got to be something that you build and build and build on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. And I will often with my daughter push her to do little things. I ask her to say hello to people that she doesn't know when it's safe. I'm not saying she goes around talking to strangers everywhere. I ask her to say please and thank you and wish people a Merry Christmas during the holidays. And when we go into her school and she sees one of the authority figures, I ask her to tell them, hey, how are you? What did you do this weekend? And these are lessons that we should teach them as young children. But if you didn't do that, you can teach them that now. And it will be uncomfortable. And if you have teens, they're going to roll their eyes. But remember, you're planting seeds for the future. So a teen who's never been introduced to it is going to turn into an adult who really struggles with this. A teen that was awkward and struggled with it, but it got introduced, and then the conversation over time became more and more, became less taboo, is going to have seeds planted and is going to be more likely to overcome whatever social awkwardness they might be experiencing. I think that when you look at the resiliency is a term that we're using a lot in my center right now because of some things that we're building and some programs we're putting together. But when you look at a resilient person, they aren't resilient alone. They are resilient with community. They are resilient because they have not just family that they can depend on, but friends. And they are resilient because they've experienced loss and falling out with friends. And they have experienced maybe even going home crying, being bummed and sad, or maybe being embarrassed, or those feelings that you have when you stick your foot in your mouth and you say the wrong thing and you learn from it. Those are all experiences that you can't just duplicate artificially. We have to experience them. Our children have to experience them. And there's all these dynamics that build character and feel hard, but there's a lot of good times and good feelings. And one of the things that we assess when somebody's coming in the door is, who do you have in your life, both family and friends, and are you willing and able to ask others for help? The whole world pretty much knows that it's important to be able to ask for help. And a lot of times we think of that as asking professionals for help. But let's be honest, when we think of that concept of I should, as a human being, be able to ask for help, I've also got to have people to ask for help from. And if I'm solo and I'm alone and my family has a legacy of being alone or socially awkward, what happens is there's nobody to ask for help from except for a professional. And that's only appropriate in some circumstances. And so it is important to focus on your identity as a friend, as a mentor. It's important that you have opportunities to help other people too. That's another piece. If you're not part of a community, people don't get to rely on you. And one of the most gratifying character building things that a human being can do, one of the greatest ways to improve mental health, is to find opportunities to help others. And that goes against that. That's a really interesting concept, right? Because right now we're in this kind of trendy, mindset when it comes to mental health of help yourself, help yourself, help yourself, focus on your own happiness, make sure that you do things that make you feel good. And I kind of turn that upside down. Do things that make you feel really awkward. Take a look around you and see if there's anybody you can reach out to and make feel better. Not in an unhealthy way. I'm not saying go give of yourself to the extent that you're being used and abused, etc. But there's an important balance when it comes to overcoming mental health issues of being self-focused as well as being focused outside of yourself. And those skills can only be built if you are intentional about building community, building friendships, and building a network. Now, I look back, I'm so lucky because my parents did model that and did build a community for me. And I happened to have opportunities to make friendships. Until this day, I have friendships from when I was born, basically. And I've been really reflective lately about some of the opportunities, and it could be as little as a job opportunity for your child because of the community that you built. Or it could be as big as finding an opportunity or a connection for a medical health issue that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to take care of in a timely manner. It can be any number of reasons that you get help because you're intentional about building this community for your family and your children. And it can be the other side where you, your kids, your family has the opportunity to reach out and help others, which is so important. And so I can't say enough. It is so important to have an identity outside of parenting. And what's interesting is what I've seen. Now, I don't have a particular research study to tell me this. This is my observations in 25 years of working with people. What I have seen is that parents who build this community and build this support and have a social life, they're less likely to take things personally. They don't get so wrapped up when their kids turn on them or call them bad parents. They're able to recoup and recover from some of those really bad moments with their children. I've noticed that the individuals and the families have more opportunities for support and tend to get through the rough times much quicker. And their therapy duration with me tends to be shorter. The parents who are mindful of this and have built good community and have friendships that they have modeled and been a part of usually have more influence over their children. Not saying they have complete influence and that's the end all be all. But what's interesting is that over time, I've seen that the kids are more attracted to the parents, which gives them more influence over their kids. What I've also seen is that in the long run, the parents with that healthy community and social life tend later on to be sought out by their children when they have their own children, when the parents have grandchildren, and they become a bigger part of the lives of their adult children when they have this healthy sense of community. I hope that at least one person listening to this who might be struggling with this issue will use this as encouragement to get brave, get uncomfortable, get out of that comfortably miserable state, and take some steps in building community and trying to reach out to people, even if it's totally uncomfortable. And let me tell you this, building that community takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience, and it takes relentlessly trying, not taking things personally, not getting so hurt that you just give up. It's a slow, steady race. But in my book, when it comes to parenting, it's an important part of both your journey and your child's journey.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production. Hosted by Brandon Jaffe. Edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson. Music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.